Okay, that's a good sound there from me. We have some far-out things on the show for you today, like a friend of mine, actor Julian Grant, who leaves for Sydney in a few hours on a $20,000 bet. To get this spread, Julian has to beat U.S. millionaire Frank Wheeler's time on a motorcycle around Australia. And that's 10,000 miles of tough going, so good luck and hang in there.
The $20,000 bet that brought me to Sydney was made by wealthy American motorcyclist Frank Wheeler. When he first made the challenge, I thought he was kidding and rashly told him to put his money where his mouth was. He did. $20,000 in cash. I could hardly refuse. I was to follow Wheeler's route, which would take me north from Sydney, up the east coast to Cairns, then cutting west into the outback and north up to Darwin. From there down the tough west coast to Perth, across the Nullarbor Plain and back to Sydney via Adelaide and Melbourne. The distance, 10,000 miles. The time I had to beat, 31 days. Many Australians have never even seen the outback, and it's not until you actually fly over Australia that you realize how huge and desolate the continent is. It's about the same size as the United States, but its entire population is only slightly larger than that of the City of London, and 75% of the people live on the East Coast. That makes it one big, empty country. It was a little frightening to realize that once I reached the real outback, then there would be few people, little water, and no assistance. I would be on my own.
Wheels are spinning in my eyes when too many reasons are rolling through my mind. I gotta leave the crowd, gotta change my scene to the lonely roads winding through my dreams. Moving on, I'm moving on, moving on.
Something I couldn't understand was why the film crew looked so upset. The reason was that they thought I'd been extremely selfish to actually crash out of camera range, which I thought was a little unfair in the circumstances.
Can you grab it then? That's it. Any damage? Does it look all right? Just there.
Back on the Seal roads for a bit, it was now a fast run across the Barkly tableland and north to Darwin, over 1,000 miles away. And then it was time for a bit of fun. There's no doubt about it. When you've seen one bump out there, you certainly haven't seen them all. Sometimes it was fun, sometimes it wasn't. Suddenly, while moving through some deep sand, I found a youngster looking for a friend. He was a baby kangaroo, a Joey. His mother had been killed by a car or truck, and he was a little orphan, delightfully unafraid, looking for company and a good meal. For the enjoyable yet short time the baby was with us, we managed to clean out our entire supplies of sweet cream. He's now growing fast and living happily with a naturalist and his wife just outside Darwin. Now, I'd seen dust and I'd seen corrugations, but travelling up this stretch was like riding up a railway line through a London fog, with eyes, nose and mouth full of talcum powder fine bull dust, hanging in the air behind passing traffic. But there was more trouble coming, in the shape of one road train, closely followed by another road train. I was completely lost, and down I went. last, I was out of the creek area. On the map, it looked like a nice fast run, 1,200 miles to Perth. Then came the mud. Miles and miles of endless mud. Then there was this bump. It took me completely unawares, and I went down hard, sliding along the ground and knocking myself cold. The film crew had in fact hit the bump themselves and decided to see what I made of it. They certainly weren't prepared for the results. I'd torn the tire over the bump and the air didn't go straight out. It allowed me to get another 200 yards and then went flat. I broadsided hard one way and then the other, in what motorcyclists call a mammoth tank slapper, and then down I went. The next thing I knew, the film crew were rushing around like a lot of old hens. Luckily, I'd put on my leathers after getting out of the mud, but I had torn my pants and hurt my knee quite badly.
Why did you ride across the road? Are you all right, Liz?
The bike was in a worse shape than I was.
Look! Now, listen, what's the alternator pattern?
That was the worst day of the trip so far. Between dawn and dusk, I'd only managed to cover 150 miles, as opposed to the usual 600 to 700. I desperately needed to make up time and had to ride 1,000 miles to Perth in under 20 hours to keep me in with a chance. I reached Perth. All I wanted to do was sleep, but there were still the press questions to answer.
Could you just ride around the corner and back here? We missed you coming in. What?
I couldn't believe it. 2,000 very tough miles in the last 3 days, and all they wanted was once more round the block.
You okay?
So, this was the last leg, the homeward run. Surely nothing else could go wrong. It's funny just how mistaken you can be. It happened late at night. 1 minute I was on the road, the next I wasn't. What was just a tiny incident turned out to be the most painful. As I went down, the handlebar landed on my right hand, snapping a bone. My hand was so numb I didn't notice the pain until later, even though the bone was sticking up, making a large lump on the back of my hand. This really did cause problems, as it's no joke trying to control a motorcycle with a broken hand, especially the right one, used for accelerating and braking. Early the next morning, a stop for medical treatment and painkillers was imperative. The treatment worked well, but I hardly felt like carrying on. However, I was too close to home. Suddenly, I saw the first signs for Sydney. I was almost there. The 10,000-mile journey had been like a strange dream. I could hardly believe it was over, but it was. I knew I'd made a good time over the last 6,000 miles, despite the many incidents, but I was still amazed to learn that I'd actually knocked 11 days off Frank Wheeler's record. The American now owed me $20,000.
I have a question to ask you.
Sure.
Would you mind coming up again? We want to get a shot to
Coming up
live at the thing.
To ride this back again. Oh, God. All right.
I'm sure you've been asked to do it again anyway.
Well, yeah, no, I will.